Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Creative Cow tutorial. And in our ongoing look at learning Avid's Media Composer and Symphony, I thought we would take things a little bit to the next level in our look at animating inside of the Marquee title tool. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how we can create this very cool animation using just the Marquee title tool. Now obviously the background element is not something I created in Marquee. It's actually an element from Boris Continuum Complete. I'm going to show you how, for all of you Symphony editors, you can take this element, export it, bring it into the Marquee title tool, and animate this entire scene using nothing but this one awesome title tool. Okay, short introduction, let's just get into Symphony, and let's get started. Okay, so let's Alt-Tab into Avid's Symphony. Obviously, that's a Command Tab for all of my Mac friends out there. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to export that background element, that steel plate texture. Now, like I said, that element was created using Boris Continuum Complete 8, which, of course, for all my Symphony friends out there, you received when you made your purchase of Symphony. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to export this element, but I want to export it a little bit bigger than what I'm working in the resolution I'm working in right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over here to Format, and I'm just going to select 1080p 23976. That way, when this element is exported, it's exported as 1920 by 1080, not 1280 by 720. So what we're going to do is we're just going to open our sequences bin here, and I need to create a sequence just so that I can have, a clip in there so that I can apply this effect to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open my motocross footage here. I'm just going to grab any clip, it doesn't matter. I'm going to drop it into the sequences bin. I'm just going to create a new video layer by hitting Control and Y on Windows, Command and Y on the Mac. And let's get into the effects palette by hitting Control and 8 on Windows, Command and 8 on the Mac. Now you'll see that I'm already in the Boris Continuum Complete family of effects. The steel plate texture is located, surprisingly enough, inside of the textures category. There it is right there, steel plate. I'm just going to take it, drag it, drop it right down here into my timeline. I'm going to right click, we're going to say export, and you'll see that I already have an export setting set up for HD still export. But one thing I do want to do here, so I just want to switch this over to be just a standard JPEG. Very nice. 1920 by 1080, looking good. I'm going to say save. We'll stick this on the desktop and let's call it steel plate background. We'll say save. It takes a second to export. If I minimize Symphony, you'll see there's the steel plate right there, ready to go. What I'm going to do, Alt-Tab back into Symphony. Let's close our motocross footage here. We'll close the effects palette. I can actually delete this sequence altogether. And last but certainly not least, I want to make sure that I switch my format back to be 720p 23976. Okay, so it's time to get into Marquee now and to set this animation up. And once you see how simple it is, I guarantee you're going to start doing more and more effects work like this inside of Marquee. Okay, so we're going to navigate up to Clip. We're going to come down to New Title. Now, of course, I'm going to be prompted as always, which title tool do I want to use? And of course, I want to use Marquee. Again, we'll just come up, we'll reset our toolbar buttons. I'm just going to drag the window over here a little bit. Very nice. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import that background element. Now, we can actually import some still images into Marquee very easily by simply navigating up to File. I'm going to come down to Import, and I'm going to say Image. Now, of course, we want our steel plate background. There it is right there. I'm going to say Open, and there is the steel plate. And you can see much larger than the frame that we're working in. No worries, this is exactly what we want. Okay, now one thing I want to show you before I actually go and add the text in here is that this steel plate background, because it's imported, it's an element, it's an image, it actually has the same abilities and capabilities of any other element that I create inside of Marquee, meaning I can take it, I can adjust its scale, I can just undo that, I can adjust its rotation. Let's just make sure here, I think I just undid the import here, so let's just import that element again here. Let's grab the steel plate. There we go. I can adjust its rotation. There we go. Just undo that. There we go. So you'll see, like I said, it functions like any other text element that you may create when working in Marquee. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my text. So I'm going to select the text tool. I'm going to click anywhere in the window. We're going to type Terminator Awesomeness. Now, of course, any similarities between this and anything else called Terminator is strictly coincidental. I just want to put that little legal disclaimer out there right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just switch back to the selection tool. Let's just increase the size of our bounding box here. And I'm going to switch the font over to this font that I actually had it's called Terminator Real NFI. Kind of an interesting looking font. I like it. I think we're going to stick with it. What I'm going to do is just center everything up, make sure that we're sort of centered in the middle of the frame here. And what I want to do now is I want to apply a texture to this text, which is sort of the same as me coming up and changing, what the color of the text is that I happen to be working with. But instead of using the fill, which you can actually find over here, or the base color, what we're going to do is we're going to navigate up to Window, and I'm going to come down to the library, and I'm going to select Textures. And inside the library, you're going to see that we have a whole bunch of textures, such as, wood, for example. I'll take wood, drag it over here, drop it in there. There's some wood. I also have some bricks as well. I can take bricks, drag it over, drop it in like such. But that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to import my own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and simply say New Texture. I have a brush metal texture that's seamless that I have here on my desktop. I'm simply going to say Open. It's going to appear up here at the top of the window under User Texture. I'm simply going to take it, I'm going to drag it and drop it right onto the text, and there it is. A little bit hard to see because of obviously the background, but we're going to get to that in just a second. Now, if you ever want to get in and make any adjustments to textures and things that you're applying to faces, where you're going to do that is up here under Window. You're going to come down to Properties, and you're simply going to select Surfaces just like that. You'll see that we can get in, the surface is set to main. We have some, we can adjust the main, the edge, the extrusion, or the background. The type is a texture. It could be a gradient or a solid color. We can enable lighting, which we're going to get to in just a second. You'll see that we can also, probably most importantly, if your element is tileable, you can simply say tile just like that to make sure that you're actually getting the look that you want with your texture. You can obviously get in offset and scale and things like that. I just wanted to point this out to you in case you need to get in and do any type of surface manipulation. This is where you're going to do it. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to come in and I want to extrude this element. So of course we're going to head back to Effect. I'll set the extrusion depth to be something like 60, something relatively big. And of course we always know that we're going to want to enable lighting. There we go, looking very nice. Now let's just position our light somewhere in the middle, probably right about there. And what I also want to do is I want to come in and I want to add a drop shadow just to make this element stand out from the background. Now let's just make sure I'm on my selection tool here. There we go. We're going to add the drop shadow. Make sure we have the element selected. There's the drop shadow there. We're going to soften it up a bit. Make sure it's at 100. Maybe we'll even sort of distance this out a little bit here. That's not too bad. And what we can do is we can just position the light accordingly, because the light would sort of be over this way. That's very cool. To sort of give it that sort of real world look that we would have if we had a light position here pointing at this text. Okay, now the other thing is that it just occurred to me that if we're going to actually have this text sticking out of the background, we're not going to want to have the drop shadow that far away. So why don't we just adjust that here? What I'm going to do is maybe we'll just put the offsets back where we had them before at 1 and -1. I don't mind if it's like that because that's a little bit more realistic. Maybe we'll even go a little bit closer than that. Maybe we'll go even like 0.1 and -0.1. There we go. That's kind of more so what I'm going for. I want it to sort of look like the light is, I guess sort of sitting right on top and sort of casting the shadow down on either side. And you're going to see where I'm coming from in just a second. Okay, so let's get in and let's create this animation, because believe it or not, the animation is actually the easy part. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to zoom back here. I'm going to hit Control and minus just so that I can zoom back to see everything here. Hold on, Control and minus. There we go. Perfect. So you can see that we actually have two elements. Like I said, we have this background element and we have our text. The problem is that right now, for me to animate these, I have to animate them independently of each other. And I'm going to come up to my window for a second because I just want to show my transform options here. If I take this background element here, my metal plate, and I just rotate it like such, you'll see they don't interact with each other. They're still two completely separate elements. I'm just going to zoom in now, because what I'm going to do, there we go, is I'm actually going to select both elements at the same time. I'm going to select one of them and then hit Control and A on Windows, Command and A on the Mac, and I'm going to navigate up to Object, because what I want to do is actually group these two elements together. Once I've grouped these two elements together and now I rotate things, you'll see that it actually now looks like that text is coming right out of that metal plate. And let me tell you, that is awesomeness. So now that I have that going on, what I'm going to do is just undo what I just did. I'm going to switch over to my basic animation mode here. Once I'm in basic animation mode, again, I'm just going to reset my views here. Once I'm in basic animation mode, we're ready to do some basic animation. So let's do that. What I'm going to do is turn animation mode on. We're going to make sure that we have our transform properties here. And all we're going to do is simply just rotate on the Y just until our plate just sort of comes to the edge of the frame, just like such. Now, one thing I should do here, I'm just going to undo what I just did. I actually want to extend this down. 4 seconds isn't long enough. So let's come up to duration, and of course we'll make this 15 seconds. I'll say OK. And now we can actually get in and do the proper animation. So let's just take our Y rotation. There we go. Sort of sitting at the edge of the frame. I didn't even need it to be too much, because remember, this isn't the edge of the frame. The edge of the frame is actually sort of over here. So I could rotate this even more, but I'm OK because I don't want the move to be that dramatic or that drastic. OK. So let's just rotate this the other way. And even I could even just remove the minus here and just make it plus 22. Just like such. Very nice. And like I said, it even looks like this Terminator awesomeness is sticking out of the metal plate. Very cool. Well, believe it or not, I'm actually ready to render this out. So what I'm going to do is just switch off animation mode. I'm going to navigate up to File. I'm going to come down to Save All to Bin. Now you'll see, remember, this is an imported element. 1920 by 1080 is the background with 3D extruded text, 15 seconds long. It's HD resolution, so 1280 by 720, 23976. Like I said, 15 seconds long. This is rendering pretty darn quick. If you were to try to create this in, a third-party application, a compositing application, you're looking at, obviously the creation and the render time inside of that application, and then importing it into Media Composer or Symphony to work with. But in reality, we don't need to do any of that. We can just take this element, build everything inside of Marquee, and then just save it out to work in our timeline. Now, once the rendering is done in Marquee, of course, we're going to want to save this title into Symphony. So we're going to call this T-Awesomeness, if that's even how you spell awesomeness. What we're going to do is save it into the sequences bin. I'll save it as DNxHD60. That's fine for the purposes of what we're doing. I'm going to say go. Now remember, we have to go through our multiple passes here. We have to go through creating the RGB channel, which is what it's doing right now. The rendering that occurred that you just saw in Marquee was actually the creation of this TIFF sequence that Symphony is now using as its reference to create our animated title. So of course it's going to create the TIFF sequence first, then it will go through and it's going to create the alpha information for this very cool element. You saw, for me to do this tutorial, you're looking at, about a 10-minute long tutorial. You probably could have created this element in about 5 minutes and saved it out and already been working with it in your timeline with your client sitting right next to you. Probably pretty impressed, let me tell you. And now that our element is done being saved out of Marquee, you'll see it immediately appears over here inside of the preview window. What I'm going to do is just hit T on the keyboard on both Mac and Windows. I'm going to hit B to edit that into my timeline. Remember, it's a green dot, so this is a real-time element. And there it is. Very cool. What I love is the fact that that light is sitting right here, and as the element rotates, the lighting changes on the Terminator awesomeness title. And that is very cool. Something in most cases you'd have to create inside of a compositing application. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.